I want to go back to something I mentioned before the last commercial break. Back in 1996 in Australia, a mass shooting. The government there responded by seizing, look at it, 600,000 guns. Since that seizure, there have been no more mass shootings in Australia. Our next guest is the founder and owner of a small rifle manufacturing business called Two Rivers Arms. He's a congressman. Steve Russell, Republican from Oklahoma. Steve, welcome to the program. It's good to have you with us, sir.
Oh, thank you, Stuart. Appreciate it.
Now, I'd like your comment on the confiscation in Australia. I know you can't do that here. I got that. But in Australia, they confiscated 600,000 weapons, and it appeared to stop the mass shootings. What's your comment on that?
Well, there's also other examples where that would not have been the outcome.
Yep.
You take Sweden, for example, did not prevent the horrific slaughter of 70 children and half a dozen adults on an island. Overreaction or laws compared to European or Western countries, they really don't match up against the Second Amendment freedoms any more than First Amendment or others. Now, as technologies advance, we certainly have to examine, are our laws effective while allowing individual liberty and freedom, or are they needing refinement, or are they not?
What about this thing called the bump stock or the trigger crank, reportedly used by the gunman in Las Vegas to turn a weapon into an automatic rapid-fire machine? Would you have any problem banning this bump stock or trigger crank device?
I think it's important to understand the history of how firearms have been regulated that are fully automatic. After the Roaring 20s and the Al Capone and Prohibition days, you had the 1934 Firearms Act, 68, 86 revisions. We've seen very effective laws they didn't ban full auto weapons, but they regulated them to the effect that they were virtually non-existent in any crime scene. The issue with mechanical devices that allow a full auto effect, I think we have to examine that, and the ATF has looked at that over their history, whether devices meet a criteria under 18th U.S. Code or whether they don't. And so we certainly need to look at some of that and examine it.
But you would have no problem in new rules which might get rid of the whole idea of rapid-fire, machine gun,
it's
automatic
not that simple.
fire. I understand that, but if we could, would you?
Well, first of all, we don't ban full auto firearms today. They are regulated. They have effective laws where they're not used in crime. I think part of the problem that you have to look at is trigger manipulation, where someone could misconstrue or design laws that would take away semi-automatic firearms, which would ban 90+% of what America owns and has the right to exercise their free rights. So as we examine things that get a full auto effect, then I think we have to examine the definitions in 18th U.S. Code without violating semi-automatic firearms. These are all parts of deliberation that we, as lawmakers, are going to need to have that discussion.
As we go forward, I pick up a sense of unease in America, grave unease at the frequency of these mass shootings, whether they're terrorism or lone wolf or whatever. There is a sense of deep-seated unease that this is happening with this frequency. You picked up on that too?
Well, we certainly feel that way when these horrific things happen, like what we saw in Las Vegas. And God bless the people in Las Vegas. They're just coming together. All of America is with them, and to the families that have suffered these tragedies. We all feel it. But, Stuart, going after devices or going after particular firearms is not the solution. When we had 9/11, we had to examine our civil liberties in terrorism, acts of terrorism. And we as a public said, okay, who are these people? How can they hurt us? And how can we as a public protect ourselves from their intentions? As we examine these types of shootings, we have to take it comprehensively like that. You had a guy that took hundreds and hundreds of pounds of gear, set up cameras inside and outside his hotel room, so much suspicious activity, nothing was said. So we have to examine this comprehensively, not have some knee-jerk reaction that takes away our liberties. But look, everything needs to be discussed. I certainly understand the firearms laws. I understand our constitutional freedoms. It's important that we don't jettison our Constitution while we're trying to protect the public from these heinous and violent acts.
Understood. Congressman Steve Russell, Republican, Oklahoma. Thanks for joining us, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Yes, sir.